Hi, Jan.
Alec?
Thank you for being open to be a jury this time and share your experience on how you would solve this case.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Just really out of curiosity, how do you find the relevance of this case? Is it relevant? Do you see experience like cases like this in your real life?
Yes, I think it's definitely relevant because what we typically see, if you want to develop a product and be really innovative for your customers and with the impact that you have, then in complex organizations, this means you will have to touch many services systems across many teams. And so you need to innovate globally versus what we are always kind of trying to teach optimize only locally by doing this autonomous focus, by doing independent teams and so on. Of course, we need to strive for teams with as less and little dependencies as we can, but you can never eliminate these dependencies. And thus you have to manage them. And I believe it's one of the most impactful capabilities any somewhat bigger organization needs to build out in order to be impactful and to be innovative.
So it sounds like you expect engineering managers to be able to solve those dependencies efficiently.
Yes, it's definitely real life examples, I would say, because despite the importance of what we discussed, I think there's little or very little on few tools that can help us achieve that, right? Because if you look at, I don't know, agile software development methodologies like Scrum, they always focus on one team.
Yeah.
And they give little hints on how you can manage that in bigger setups. There are ways, of course, there are things like OKRs and so on, but they also don't really help with that, as we can also see in that case.
So it's like must-reads then, sounds like.
Yeah.
Nice. And let's imagine you and EM, it's real life. Now it's your team. It's written here, your checkout team. But you still have experience and the knowledge that you have right now.
Yeah.
How would you solve it?
Yeah. I think I can touch a few of the aspects and let's go maybe through the most important ones. First thing that I would also try to avoid from the beginning is we see in the description that my team's objectives are planned in a way that like 60 to 70% of the capacity is on one objective and 20 to 30% on the second. So this means practically we have already nearly 100% of the capacity planned. That's what happens often also in OKR systems because all the stuff should be done. But what is forgotten here is that there's also like operational day-to-day work, right? You need to be able to handle incidents like we also have in this case. You need to be able to handle if the complexity increases, what we also have in this case. You need to be able to also have some unexpected business requirements that out of a sudden need to be prioritized because of, I don't know, can be something, right? The most extreme case is probably COVID. But there's also other cases where unforeseen things happen that just need to be done right now. It might be for compliance reasons, might be for a once in a lifetime business opportunity, whatever. And so if you already plan for 100% of the capacity, this is, I think, the first step into failure.
So it sounds like the second objective is not needed here if you want to achieve at least the first one.
Exactly, right. For example, yes. Secondly, I think if you go then into the execution, I think the sequencing is relevant. As is also described in the material, there's a cost of delay, right? If one team delivers something, that also depends on some other teams' contributions or their delivery, it means it will not have any impact unless the other part is also, or the last part is also delivered. And so you would normally try to minimize the cost of delay, which is the cost that you have already spent something, some investment, some engineering effort into something until it really gets live and has some tangible impact. So, for example, I think the sequencing with the second team, the checkout team, should be in a way that is clear when they deliver, so that we know also then there come the technical aspects. When can you integrate? Of course, you can agree on an API contract upfront, and that's good so that you can start independently and in parallel to develop. But we all know reality kicks in only when you do the real integration. So if you can keep this as shortly together as possible, then it's also beneficial.
So it sounds like they had to flip those priorities of the checkout team, and then
exactly
was probably like.
Yeah, I mean, it also depends on the priorities of the checkout team. So maybe what they did before, what was it? yeah, they have a high priority objective, right? So we also have to weigh this against how is the importance of our objective. I think that's also another problem potentially with OKRs. If you're not clear which takes precedence, then it's hard to make these decisions. But at least you need to decide upfront so that you do not run into the situation like in this case.
Nice.
Yeah, next one is the topic of escalation, right? There's this, it's kind of not going as planned, and the issues pile up, and escalation happens very late in Q2. It's in June only. And I think this is also a typical behavior because we tend to think that escalation is a bad thing. And I think that's not true, right? Because escalation is a valuable mechanism. If two parties cannot agree or reach an agreement or come to a solution, then this is what leadership is intended to be helping with, and can only if it is escalated to. So I think I would do this earlier, and at least to create a transparency so that maybe the directors of these teams can agree on, hey, it's not going as planned. What if we continue to have struggles there? Is there something that we can do? And let's plan for that now. And then you avoid also the cases like here when the director is really falling sick when they are finally escalated to.
And I'm really curious, do you expect your engineering managers only to escalate, or do you expect them to come up with proposals of solutions what can be done?
That depends. I mean, ultimately, as also is written in the case, we expect, of course, managers to come up with solutions. So that would be my first expectation. But realistically, there are a lot of situations typically where they are not able to, which is why we have like other levels in the hierarchy. So depending on what they do. I mean, ideally they would come and have like scenarios and propose them, and already with pros and cons. But if they have that, then they typically can also decide alone, and they wouldn't need to bring it up. But if they don't get to it, then of course this is also needed, and especially when it comes to these priorities, like what we discussed, right? Is this high priority objective of the checkout team more important, or is it the high priority go live in Sweden for the fiscal compliance team? So this is where leadership needs to provide clarity and help making the best decision in the interest of the company. And so they bring the broader perspective.
So you have more.
Yeah, the last one is, I think, this is all a very formal approaches, right? In the end, we need to acknowledge there's always these problems in allocation of people and not having the right capacity, especially with fixed teams. And today we have like teams consisting, if they are cross-functional, of backend, web front end, mobile, maybe iOS, Android separately. You might have machine learning engineers, you might have data scientists, whatever, right? It's easily the case, even in one team, that someone is not there because of whatever, sickness, extended holidays, whatever. And I think what we need to be able to in this complex world, you cannot do everything through a plan. You also need to be pragmatic. So the case we have is in that context complicated because we have very different tech stacks. The one team is on JavaScript based, and the other one is on Go. So what I would normally aim for is, if I'm waiting for a delivery of another team that I depend on and they tell me they cannot do it, I would think about, hey, if this is important, can I spend some of the capacity of my team to support them, to make it happen, and so on. This is then, of course, relevant or to know if this is feasible technically. So if you have like really T-shaped engineers who are senior engineers who are able to switch the programming language easily, which also today became much easier with all the AI-assisted tools we have, right? Then you can think about also, hey, then I dedicate my capacity to produce the deliverable that I need from the other team, of course, in collaboration and close contact with them. But this would be a very pragmatic approach to resolve it ultimately.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you for that. Just maybe, can you name like 2-3 major principles that you use when you like come up with those solutions, or those that you usually use nowadays, and maybe later on, maybe 1-2 books that you would recommend to our AMs to read?
Yeah, I'm not. I think we talked about most of them. One principle that we mentioned and referred to was this cost of delay.
Mhm.
And the other, it's not a principle, but I really think this ability to make things happen
Mhm.
and to have that mindset of we are optimizing not for our team, our unit, or whatever, but for the company, and combining this with pragmatism to really make it happen. I think this is super important. What helps, as I said in the beginning, right, we should still strive for minimizing dependencies and having a good setup team-wise. So a book that I would recommend is for sure the classic, the Team Topologies book. This really helps. In that case, it doesn't help, but if you are in an organization that is much more messed up, having more dependencies and more silos, then it could be even worse. So I think it starts with structuring your organization well, and then you go to the next levels like steering well and then optimizing delivery within.
Yeah, thank you for that.
My pleasure.